Hey YouTube. Today I'm going to be talking about my playthrough of Demon Souls. I played both the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation 5 version. I did two playthroughs, New Game Plus, New Game Plus 1 on each version. And yeah, I'm going to be talking about my opinions on the game as a whole, as well as which version I think is better. So just to give a little bit of background with me and this game. So Demon Souls was actually the first Souls game that I ever played. I played it back on the original PlayStation 3. In fact, that is the hardware that I played the PS3 version uh, this year. I basically, got the custom firmware running on my original fat PS3, and I played the game that way. So I played it on original hardware. I'm honestly surprised that my PS3 still works, but thankfully it does. Um, And just giving this background here, I wanted to point that out because it's not like, I'm one of the people that started in a later Souls like and then went back and played the old game. I actually played Demon Souls first, so I do have some nostalgia for it. Now, I will say that I never beat it back in the day. I never actually completed the game. But I want to say I got maybe like halfway through. And the reason why I basically went through this sort of little disclaimer is because I'm actually going to be a little bit critical of this game. I don't really like it that much, um, and at the time it was the only game of its kind. So I think depending on which lens someone is judging the game, that's going to sort of lead to a different outcome. For me, I'm judging the game on how fun is it to play in current day, right? So I'm not really taking that much into account um, the fact that it's the first game of its kind. So I am going to be a little bit harsh. I do think that, frankly, with however many Souls games and Souls likes there are today, there's not that great of a reason to play this. But I'll get into more detail for that further in the video. But I did want to give the disclaimer that I just don't mindlessly hate this game. I do have nostalgia for it. I remember, some of the things that happened in my first playthrough when I played this back when it came out. So with any of these videos that I make, I'll start with things I like about Demon Souls, and one disclaimer here is that my favorite parts of Demon Souls are really mainly pointed to the original. The reason why this is because Blue Point Games took a lot of liberties changing things, and just making their own creative decisions to change, the ambient sounds, the soundtrack, the visual design of certain areas of certain enemies. So when I talk about the fact that I really like the atmosphere and I really like the ambient sounds of Demon Souls, I'm only talking about the PlayStation 3 version. So now that I've given that disclaimer, um, I will say that Demon Souls has probably one of the most interesting worlds in the FromSoft games that they've made. Now, I'm not a huge lore person when it comes to Souls games in general. I know a little bit, but I don't really delve into the very deep aspects of it. But my argument is that you don't need to have this crazy deep understanding of the lore to uh, be impacted by the atmosphere of a game. So you can feel certain emotions when you're in a certain area, even if you don't know everything about that area. So um, I did want to sort of mention that because I don't pretend to be this Demon Souls like expert when it comes to every facet of the story, but I do really like the sound design, especially the ambient sound of Demon Souls. I think it's its biggest strength. Um, a great example is Tower of Latria. Tower of Latria is one of the coolest, like most interesting areas FromSoft has ever crafted, in terms of its theming. Um, it's I'm sure everyone has heard of it. Like for example, the insects buzzing when you first load into the area. It just has this very eerie atmosphere, and I like horror stuff, so I love Tower of Latria in terms of how it looks. Now, how some of the levels play, that's different, but I'm gonna leave that for later. Right now, I'm just talking about the theming of the game. I also really like Valley of the Fallen looks. I think Valley of the Fallen is like this horrifying, scary ass area. Like I would not want to be in a place like Valley of the Fallen. And there's just subtle things that I always remembered about how these areas look. Like for example, in the second level of the Valley of the Fallen, how it's like perpetually raining. You can't really see the edge of the map. You just see this rain and you hear it. You also hear sort of the ambient rain sounds when you're in that level. The second level of Tower Latria, also when you get to the bottom of the level, you hear like these toads. You hear I don't know if it's like frogs or toads. It's something that I just remember very vividly about these levels. Little things like that, I think, just really add to um, the atmosphere of the game. And I think that is easily um, the best part about Demon Souls. And I'll have a section later where I discuss, the differences um, that I really just didn't like from the original to the PlayStation 5 remake. But I just wanted to focus this section on the things I liked. I also liked some of the. I like the voice acting a lot. For example, I like the dialogue. I don't know what it is. Uh, this game just has this very almost ethereal feel to it. A great example is when you first meet the crestfallen warrior guy, and he just has this very echoey voice, and I feel like it was made with intent.
To save this land and be remembered as a hero. Hunting for demons? Try one of the archstones. Now go. That is why you came, is it not? To this accursed Boletaria.
I just really like that aspect of Demon Souls. It just feels to me, it feels different than most other Souls games, and it's a shame to see how Bluepoint just took all of that and just threw it in the toilet. Um, but yes, I do love this aspect of Demon Souls. I think that the gameplay is fine. Again, I know I said I wasn't really gonna account for the fact that this game is very old, but I have to cut it a little bit of slack. Yes, it doesn't have omnidirectional rolling, which sucks. But relatively speaking, the game um, controls fairly well. Like it's not like the game controls poorly. It's not really going to match up to current Souls games, obviously, but it's not as in the controls are bad or it just feels bad to move your character. It does the job. It's good enough. Now that I've gone over probably my favorite aspect of Demon Souls, I'm going to talk about mainly why I just don't enjoy the game that much as a whole. And it really just stems from mostly the levels. So I'm not sure if I'll have a section later where I kind of give. I probably will do that later, where I just give like a brief thoughts on each level because there's really not that many levels in this game. Um, I just think that many of the levels in Demon Souls are not particularly enjoyable to play, um, and the bosses are also not particularly enjoyable either. So that kind of leaves, the game might control pretty decently, but if the levels are not that fun and the bosses kind of suck, you just have to ask yourself, why even really play this? Now, I think that originally, early Souls games lean more towards this sort of puzzle element of it. Um, you look at how different Demon Souls, or even Dark Souls 1, is to Dark Souls 3, you see this very visible like shift in game design from more problem solving slash puzzle type of gameplay to a more combat focused gameplay. Now, obviously, this is going to depend on the person. Some people um, like how the older games are in terms of, um, you know, having to sort of solve certain interactions that the game puts you in, as opposed to just, R1 roll that the games are kind of known to be today. But personally, that's what I like about the Souls games. I like the fast paced and responsive combat. And I think it's quite obvious that Demon Souls is not about that. Um, Many of my complaints for Demon Souls, someone can make the argument that, well, that's why they like the game. They like that in a certain situation they might have to use some type of consumable item, or you know, have this different strategy to tackle a challenge in the game rather than just running in there and fighting stuff. But for me, I just don't really enjoy the levels too much. Another thing is that I feel like, many of the, especially bosses of Demon Souls, are very puzzle-like, and once you know the solution to the puzzle, um, it just makes replaying the game a little quite dull, to be honest with you. So, um, a good example would be something like, I don't know, the Adjudicator, right? Whereas when you run in it for the first time, you kind of have to sort of on the fly realize that, hey, you can only hit this specific section to do damage to this boss. Whereas once you already know what the gimmick of the boss is, I think gimmicky is probably a better word to describe these bosses rather than puzzle-ish. But like once you know the gimmick of a given boss, uh, every subsequent attempt of the boss just gets very dull. It's almost like once you know the solution, this game is quite easy. That's why I think that Demon Souls could either be one of the hardest games of the series if you just play it completely blind, to probably the easiest game in the series if you just know all of the solutions to the gimmicks slash puzzles that the games throw at you. Actually, we'll make that section where I talk about each level. Again, there's not too many of them. I want to have a section for the levels and one section for the bosses, so I'll just start with the levels for now. 1-1, I think, is probably the peak of Demon Souls levels. Actually, for all the smack talk that I've been doing to Demon Souls, I think 1-1 is one of the greatest introductory levels in any of these games. I know a lot of people like to glaze Dark Souls 1, Undead Parish, Undead Burg, but I like Boletaria. I think Boletaria is the most fun level in the game. So 1-1, now that I'm really thinking about it, I think is my favorite level in the game. Then we have 1-2, which is not that great. I think it's fairly short. The Honestly, 1-2 is pretty unremarkable. I think the whole point of that level is just to sort of teach the player to avoid the dragon, basically trying to kill you through that bridge. But I think once you make it to the underground area, the level is pretty unremarkable. And really, like the hardest part of the level are the dogs, which I don't even think is a great game design. It's almost like the first time you go in there and you don't know the dogs are coming, you're just gonna get totally swarmed because you can barely even see where they are. Um, and then once you know, like, okay, I have to try to lure these, and sort of try to fight them one by one, or at least two of them at a time. That's pretty much the level. And then we have 3-1, which I would say is probably second or third in terms of my favorite levels in the game. I think 3-1 is quite enjoyable. It's just maybe because it's just more combat oriented, and you don't get screwed by the geometry a lot. I think that is a common theme in the levels of Demon Souls that I don't like, is that oftentimes you're just fighting in areas that are just sort of built to not be fought in comfortably. And I think that Boletaria usually gives you ample room to tackle the combat challenges of the game in, at least to me, what feels like the most fair way. So, But yeah, I think 3-1 is great. I like how towards the end you will basically unlock this shortcut. It's one of the best levels in Demon Souls. Again, for me it's like top three in terms of my favorites. I'll talk about Stonefang Tunnel. I think 2-1 is it's right there in the middle for me. It's pretty mid. There are sections of 2-1 that I think just completely suck. Notably, like very early on, once you get past that sort of large room that has the dogs, and towards the back, there's this fat official. There is this section where you are literally in this tiny corridor, and depending on the weapon you're using, you can't even swing your weapon. It's this is exactly what I meant early on, where Demon Souls just has this thing where it just likes to put you in places to fight that are just not built to fight it. Um, so, uh, yeah, I really hate just these like tiny quarter combat encounters. Uh, Another thing I'm not like really that huge of a fan of in terms of 2-1 is the minor enemies. They're just not really that fun to fight, to be honest with you. They're very tanky, they're very damage spongy, and they're just more boring than anything. I would rather almost fight a faster, more lethal enemy with less health than just these damage spongy, slow minor enemies. But to give some credit, it is cool to drain the water, open the new path, and um, in general, I think the level's okay. But I'm not gonna sit here and say that 2-1 is just this amazing level. I mean, it's just pretty mid for me. And then we go into 2-2. I personally, this is probably one of my most hated levels, like of all time. To be honest with you, I actually in my 4 playthroughs of Demon Souls, I only played this like legitimately one time. Every other time, I took the shortcut straight to Flame Lurker. More than anything, I think that the bear bugs are just absolute dog shit game design. I know that I think they're susceptible to statuses and magic. My argument is that if you're not playing a magic build, you basically have to hit this enemy for like 2 or 3 minutes. Um, Bear bugs themselves have like 1 or 2 attacks. I'm talking about the big ones that take forever to kill. So I just think this type of like enemy design is just garbage, and I really haven't seen it again in any game. Actually, there is one game that I saw something similar to this, and it was Lords of the Fallen 2013, the first one, in the DLC where there are these ghost enemies that only take damage from magic. I just think any game that severely punishes you if you are not specking into magic is just these games should not do that. It should not force you to change your build to just deal with one enemy. That's just me. I think there's a reason why stuff like this is just not seen commonly in the later games, and if there is, I can't think of it. Like I'm going through my memory and thinking if there's anything like this, and Dark Souls 3, Elden Ring, Bloodborne. Like I just don't remember that. Like usually, pretty much any enemy that I can think of can be properly dealt with either magic or no magic. So yeah, I think the bear bugs are just complete garbage. The level's just confusing and just tedious to do. And I remember I'm kind of regretting not having gone through the level at least one time, like the proper way, or at least the way the developers intended on the PlayStation 3 version, because I just don't even have footage for it. And for both PS3 playthroughs, I just said like, screw this. Like I don't want to play this level. I think it's garbage. Um, and part of me wonders if like the devs knew that the level was garbage and they just put that sort of shortcut, not even a shortcut, honestly, this like ledge drop down section just to skip the level and go fight the boss because even the devs knew the level was garbage. But that's just me. Then there's 3-1, Tower of Latria. Now, I mentioned earlier that I really like the atmosphere of Tower of Latria. It's probably one of my favorite themes in any level in Souls games, but I do think that 3-1 as a level to play is just not particularly fun. To me, the level just feels basically like this confusing maze, and the combat encounters that are placed your way are just very. It just feels like a very formulaic level to me. It's like open cell, either it's either empty or There's some item there, which most of the time is just kind of useless. You know, it's just open cell, check what's in it, open cell, check what's in it, fight one tentacle guy. Um, so yeah, I really just hate playing through 3-1 to be honest with you. Again, I like you know, if this level was turned into like a movie, I would love it. But playing through the level is just not enjoyable for me. I think it just kind of sucks. Um, and yeah, I don't even know what else to really say about it. It's just I didn't like it the first time I played it, my first playthrough, and I guess the silver lining for me is when I was on my third and fourth playthrough, I knew exactly where to go. At least I think I did, and I just got through it as fast as possible. And then there's 3-2. I think 3-2 is way better. I would say that 3-2 is definitely in the top three for me. Like, if I had to rank my favorite levels in the game, obviously, I think Boletaria 1-1 would be number one. And then it would kind of be a toss up for number two, either 1-3 or 3-2. So I think 3-2 Tower Latria is, it's just more, it just has better flow for me. You basically start at this, like, super high up upper section, and you make your way down, and I don't know, it just feels like you know, like I didn't really get lost too much in this map, and it just was fun to play. I don't know, I think that the enemies are, they're not obnoxious like the bear bugs. You have the gargoyle guys, and then once you um, sort of, I think was it, you pull you kill the mages, and then it sort of drops big like hard monster to the ground, and then it unleashes this new like bug enemy. I think it's honestly quite creative. You know, the level changes once you um, do this one sort of pivotal task, and you're faced with new enemies to fight. So my only complaint actually for this level is the run up to the boss. How the devs put a Black Phantom tentacle dude in this tiny staircase. I died to that enemy a lot. I uh, I just think it's kind of obnoxious, but it's honestly a minor complaint. It doesn't ruin the level for me. But yeah, if I had to pick my least favorite part of 3-2, it would be that Black Phantom tentacle guy. Then we have Shrine of Storms. I don't really like Shrine of Storms very much, and the biggest reason for it is the manta ray enemies shooting at you from the sky. Um, I just think it's very obnoxious. I also think in 4-1, there's this underground section that is once again this tiny, tiny hallway corridor, and the devs basically want you to fight these rolling skeleton enemies in this tiny freaking hallway. I think it's just miserable. It is not enjoyable at all. Once again, you know, the devs just love putting you in places to fight enemies that you yourself have very little mobility, and just, you know, depending on the weapon, like sometimes you can't even swing your freaking weapon. So yeah, I hate that section of the level. And just trying to fight these enemies, I think the rolling skeleton enemies are probably, in terms of the base game, the most difficult enemies to deal with. Now that I think about it, I would say that they're harder than the sort of elite knights in Boletaria. Um, they are more difficult than the giant depraved ones in Valley of Defilement. I think this is like probably the most difficult set of enemies to fight, and just Shrine of Storms just loves putting you in situations where, like, not only you have to fight this difficult enemy, but you have shit being shot at you from the sky. It's just obnoxious and just and just annoying, honestly. Um, and then we have 4-2. I actually really dislike this level. Um, Maybe because in my Dex playthrough, I tried to get the hiltless sword as soon as possible, which basically required me running through this level at a, you know, when I was at the weakest in terms of like my character. But just everything about 4-2 I hate. I mean, even from the beginning, you have to drop down this tiny little ledge, and you're like on the side of the mountain, and you have to fight two skeleton dudes in this tiny, tiny area while you're being shot at from the sky from the manta rays. I just think it's total dog shit. I mean, just even if the manta rays were not shooting at you, this would like really be bordering on the line of BS in my opinion. Just on the arena that you have to fight these enemies in. And then once you get past that, you have the respawning sort of Reaper summons. Um, I don't hate these that much, but I don't love them either. I guess. I think dodging the laser beam is kind of inconsistent, and I just like always like when I played this level blind, I didn't know like where the Reapers were. It was totally miserable. I just wanted to get out of this level as soon as possible. And maybe that's the intent. Maybe that's what it's supposed to make you feel like you just want to get the hell out of here. But it's I just don't really have much fun playing it. If any fun, actually. I greatly dislike 4-2. And finally, we have Valley of Defilement. So 5-1. It's hard for me to sort of gauge this level. Again, on one hand, on a thematical perspective, I do like how it looks and how it, the feelings that it elicits. But this is probably one of the more frustrating levels in the game. For one, you have the regular depraved enemies that have this lunge, like 5-hit combo that is, in many cases, either a one-hit or almost a one-hit. You have the Toxic Rat section, which is just complete trash, in my opinion. This section just totally sucks. You have the level's actually kind of long too, and I think for someone that hasn't played Demon Souls, like if someone were to play the game blind, this would be the hardest level to get through, in my opinion. It just kind of requires you to, like one little mistake and you can just die. You can get swarmed. Sometimes, like the depraved ones will, like the mini ones will just come out of nowhere. Like I swear I don't even know where they're coming from. I don't know if they're dropping from like the high ground and I just missed them. But there is a section where you have to basically drop down into like this hallway. And the issue is that Demon Souls actually doesn't have a plunging attack. So you either have to take this ladder down or drop down, and it's just this section always makes you nervous, and it's just always a pain in the ass when you just get one shot by one of those combos and just have to do it all over again. But I don't know. I think 5-1 is okay. Maybe like below average. Somewhere like in the 4 out of 10 range. I don't load into 5-1 and think, wow, I can't wait to play this. This is going to be great. But I do think that it's not as dog shit as, let's say, 2-2 or 3-1 or 4-2. I think that, as annoying as some can be, I think I'm willing to give it more of a pass than the before mentioned levels. And finally, we have 5-2. I think, again, I'm kind of just in the middle when it comes to 5-2. It's like once you know where to go, the level's pretty short. The issue is, when you play this blind and you can get disoriented very quickly, and it is pretty obnoxious. I mean, you basically you're pretty much guaranteed to get poisoned. And I think the last section of 5-2 is my least favorite. Right before the boss, where you're in this sort of like, I don't even know how to describe it, this like favela-looking shanty town with a bunch of depraved ones. And like I said, the issue with this enemy is that 5-hit combo that they have that can sometimes literally one-shot you. And sometimes you just don't, like, no matter how careful I am, sometimes there's just one enemy that I just miss somewhere and I just get surrounded and wombo combo to death, and then to run through the poison all over again and get back there. So, I think the level it's okay for what it's supposed to be, this sort of obnoxious poison swamp. I still think it's better than, 2-2, 3-1, and 4-2. But it's not a level that I would, say like, I love 5-2. It's amazing. It's just kind of whatever for me. So now that I've gone through the levels, I'll go through the bosses. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, the bosses are not my favorite. I actually don't like them at all. I'm just gonna be honest. But I'll just go through every boss in the game and world order and just give my brief thoughts on each one. First is Vanguard. I think Vanguard is fine for what it is, which is just a tutorial enemy that is a scripted death, but it's possible to defeat. I think he's fine. I'm not really gonna throw shade at Vanguard. I think he does what he's supposed to do, so no problems there. Then we have Phalanx. I don't really like Phalanx too much, mainly because and this will be a common theme in this section, it's like, if you don't know that Phalanx is weak to fire, this boss is absolutely, utterly obnoxious. And if you do know that they're weak to fire, you can very quickly dispatch it with just a bunch of fire bombs. And, I don't know what it's called in Demon Souls. I'm just going to call it the fire pine resin or fire paper, whatever. The fire consumable item that adds fire to your weapon. Again, it's just kind of one of these bosses that, if you know the solution to the puzzle, the boss is kind of a pushover, and if you don't, this boss is utterly miserable. The good thing I can say is that the run up to Phalanx is not too bad once you've unlocked, from the starting point of 1-1. So, Phalanx, I don't really like it too much, but I don't think it's egregiously horrible. Speaking of Tower Knight, I think Tower Knight looks cool. I mean, he's a visually cool looking fight, but he's just pretty whatever. Once again, it's like once you know the gimmick to go kill the archers at the top, Tower Knight himself only has like I think 2 or 3 attacks, and he's memorable. I think in what he looks like. It's a pretty like epic looking fight, but in terms of actually fighting him, it's pretty mid. Honestly, even below mid, like honestly pretty below average, at least for me. Like it's not super fun to fight Tower Knight. It's just kind of like, pretty whatever fight. You have the Penetrator. Penetrator's probably easily, I think, I would say my second favorite boss in the game. It's probably one of the most technical bosses in the game. So, and I think I actually don't have any problems with Penetrator. I think it's a lot of fun to fight, and at least Boletaria ends on a good note with one of the best bosses in the game. Then we have the I believe it's called Armored Spider in 2-1. Just another sort of gimmick boss. I mean, more than anything, it's just understanding like the order of operations here. Once you know that move that basically lights the whole ground on fire, it's just a pretty formulaic boss for me. Once you're in the Armored Spider's face, again, it only has I think like 2 attacks, maybe 3, and yeah, it's just actually I will say it's pretty obnoxious to get hit by the web that kind of stuns you, and then you get hit by the fireball. But, yeah, I don't know. It's just not fun for me to fight bosses like this. Again, it's more of a... I don't want to call it a puzzle boss, because I don't think it's like you're solving a puzzle or whatever. It's just kind of... It's creative, I guess. I'll give it that. It's kind of like a creative fight. It's not just your cookie-cutter, like, fight big enemy. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. Pretty below average for me. Pretty forgettable. Then we have Flame Lurker. Now, I used to say that Flame Lurker was one of the best bosses in the game, and honestly, it still is one of the best bosses in Demon Souls. But after having played the game 4 times, you kind of just realize that Flame Lurker, just like most Demon Souls bosses, doesn't have a lot of attacks. And for me, since rolling through the explosion is so difficult, this fight sort of just devolved into just running attacks. Basically bait the attack, running attack, do one running attack, and back off. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I struggle a lot to sort of play aggressively against Flame Lurker because it's just so difficult to dodge, to roll through that explosion attack. And the other big issue is that I'm honestly just not incentivized to, take a lot of risk and play aggressively, because every failed attempt means you have to drop down all the way back there. And, the run-up to Flame Lurker it's pretty obnoxious. It's just annoying. So whenever I would fight him, I would just basically try to fight him with basically minimizing risk. So then you have Dragon God. Not much to say. I hate this fight. I think it sucks. Just another gimmick sort of puzzle fight. For the boss that is shown in the opening movie, I think this fight is just complete garbage. I'm sure there's someone out there that likes it, but certainly not me. Yeah, this boss is total dog shit. So then we got Fool's Idol for 3-1. I don't really like this boss either. I could see someone making an argument as to why they like it, but again, it's sort of another gimmicky fight where you have to, with my understanding, sort of from the little glimpse that you got memorized where the rune traps are on the ground, so you don't step on them, because if you do, you're basically stunned for like 10 years. And yeah, it's just, you get to the boss, and then she splits into multiple copies of herself, and it's funny because Crystal Sage in Dark Souls 3 is honestly not that different. In terms of, it's like the same theme, right? Like at some point, Crystal Sage will make copies of himself that throw spells at you, but I much would rather fight Crystal Sage than Fool's Idol, personally. The other thing is that Fool's Idol kills you. You have to run all the way back there, which is just so obnoxious. So yeah, I just think Crystal Sage did it better. I don't even like Crystal Sage, like I said, but I would rather fight that than Fool's Idol. Then you have the Man-Eaters. This was another boss that I used to say that was one of the better fights in Demon Souls, but frankly, this fight is just super janky. Um, the Man-Eaters can get stuck flying around the map, and there's nothing. And I think it happened to me once. I'll try to put it on the screen if I can find when it happened. I think it was in the PS5 version, but yeah, like the boss can just bug out, and you literally have to close out of the game and restart the boss fight. It's very obnoxious. So, I still think Man-Eaters are better than like Dragon God and Armored Spider. Like I think they're a step above just your sort of very boring gimmick fights. But I wouldn't sit here and say that Man-Eaters are fun. They're just okay. Then we have the I honestly forgot the name of the boss for 3-3. It's basically an NPC fight. Again, the whole sort of thing about this fight is that it was meant to be a PvP encounter. I don't really play these games PvP, so in terms of how I played it, it's basically just a fight another player character. I will always hate these in any Souls game. I hate PvP encounters. I think they're just the laziest, most boring fights ever. The only games that where I think these are fun is something like Lies of P, because Lies of P has its parry system. So I think fighting Huguenots and Lies of P can be fun, but I just despise fighting these enemies in any Souls game. It's not even just Demon Souls. And Dark Souls 1-3 and Bloodborne. I think Sekiro, you never really find a copy of your character in Sekiro, so I guess that game doesn't have it. But yeah, 3-3, don't like it. I think it sucks. Then we got 4-1 for Adjudicator. Just another gimmick, boring ass fight. Once you know the gimmick, he goes down with very little effort. He has like 1 or 2 attacks. He looked cool. I think he looks cool, but I think the boss fight sucks. Then we got I think it's called the Lost Hero, the blind guy in 4-2. I'm kind of like conflicted on this guy because I feel like I'm such a pussy that I never actually fought him without taking advantage of the fact that he can't see you. I think there was I couldn't remember if there was like a ring or something that you equip that just literally completely trivializes the fight. And it just goes back to the Demon Souls runbacks just kind of encouraging beating the boss through any means necessary, which might be what some people like about Demon Souls. But it's just the thought of dying to Lost Hero and having to make it all the way back down there past the Reapers. It's just so annoying that I think every time I fought this guy, I always just exploited that. And it's not even an exploit. Like that's how the devs want you to. that's the whole sort of puzzle element of Demon Souls, that you can just totally trivialize the boss with the right item or the right strategy. Then you have the Storm King, another gimmick fight. I hate this fight. I think it sucks. I mean, it's supposed to be this sort of like epic giant monster fight, but I just don't enjoy it. It was a slog every time I did it. It'll be a slog anytime I do it again. Hopefully not. Hopefully I'll never have to fight this again. But yeah, Storm King is complete garbage, at least for me. Finally, we're in Valley of Defilement. Um, First, we have Leechmonger. It's just another situation where boss can be taken down extremely quickly if you know that he's weak to fire. And if you don't, I think this boss can be a huge pain in the ass. The biggest thing with Leechmonger is that you're going to want to use that fire, because if he kills you, you're going to have to do 5-1 all over again. And, you know, I really think 5-1 is like one of the levels that it's just not very easy to run past all the enemies. Like, I feel like you truly have to do the level all over again. So, you know, I always, whenever I get to Leechmonger, I just try to, you know, however cheap I have to be to take him down, I'll do it, because the consequences for dying are very, very large. You know, having to do the entire level again. Then we have Dirty Colossus. It's just kind of pretty forgettable fight. I think there was one of my playthroughs, I was getting wrecked by this boss. Something about fighting the bosses in Valley of the Defilement that always makes me very nervous, because again, if you die to the boss, you really have to do this obnoxious, annoying level all over again. So I think it's purposely why the bosses in Demon Souls are, you know, pretty weak, is because they're balanced around you having to do the entire level again. But I don't really have too much to say about Dirty Colossus. He has very few attacks. I mean, he's not particularly fun to fight. He's just pretty whatever. So, and then lastly, we have what is it? Lady Estrella and Garl Vinland. I think lore-wise, and again, I'm not like a huge expert on the lore here for Demon Souls. I'm sure that if you are, this is a very, you know, high-stakes fight when it comes to the story of the game. But in terms of gameplay, I think this boss fight's pretty dog shit. Again, it's another NPC fight. You know, Garl Vinland himself has very like shitty AI. He kind of just stands in this, basically this like hallway-looking area, and you know, he swings, you attack, back off. He swings, you attack, back off. It's just very boring. And once you kill Garl Vinland, you know, the fight is over. So, in terms of gameplay, yeah, I think this fight is complete shit. So, yeah. And then lastly, we have the final boss, which is, gosh, I can't believe I can't remember his name. I'm actually gonna have to look up what his name is. King Galant. I can't believe I forgot his name, since I would say that this is the best boss in the game. Again, King Galant has probably the most fleshed out moveset in all of Demon Souls. He actually wrecked me a bunch of times. I don't know if I'm just that bad at the game, or if I just not used to how Demon Souls plays. Demon Souls does feel a little bit different from like modern Souls games, so even though like King Galant, compared to some of the crazy stuff you have to fight nowadays, like in current Souls and Souls likes, it's just total cakewalk. He did actually kill me a few times. But yeah, I think this is probably the most technical and enjoyable fight in the game. And unfortunately, like, when it comes to bosses, I think Demon Souls only really has like two bosses that I truly like, which are King Galant and Penetrator. I think every other boss is just kind of whatever. So, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on all the bosses. I'll just have this short section, hopefully short, just to talk about just general, just gameplay design decisions that I just don't enjoy about Demon Souls. Some of them I've already mentioned, but I'll just quickly go over them in a sort of condensed fashion. Again, one of them is the Demon Souls just loving to put you in these situations where you have to fight enemies, but the geometry of the level is your biggest obstacle. You know, we're talking tiny hallways where your weapon is bouncing off the wall. We're talking, you know, side of a mountain in 4-2 while the manta rays shoot shit at you from the side. You have just basically a huge chunk of Valley of Defilement where you can just fall to your death at any moment. Um, More than anything, like you're fighting against the environment more than the enemies, which I'm just not a huge fan of. Another thing I didn't like are the upgrade materials. I haven't mentioned this before, so in my strength playthrough, I decided to use. I forgot the name of the weapon. I think it's like a one-handed axe. I think it's what Executioner Meralda uses, if I remember correctly. And I remember that since I went a strength build, I wanted to do a strength infusion for it, and that required me to farm the lava worm enemies in 2-2, and I shit you not that this was one of the most obnoxious and annoying things I have ever done in a Souls game. This is where, if Cheat Engine was available, it would be completely justified. I fought these worm guys for hours. The drop rate for what I needed to get that infusion was so disgustingly low, it was criminal. So I am not a fan of how just upgrading weapons is in Demon Souls in general. Okay, because for two of my playthroughs, actually three. So each playthrough I tried to use a different weapon, and three of those weapons use colorless Demon Souls. So Hiltless, Dragonbone Smasher, and Penetrator Sword. And like this is the part where like I don't know how someone that isn't looking shit up is supposed to know this. Like, which I actually lead into the next thing I don't like, which is world tendency. But like, I just don't know. Like, this game can be so obtuse that, I think a lot of people, most people will agree that sort of the optimal way to experience Demon Souls your first time is to play it blind, and I just don't know how the hell anyone is supposed to know to like alter their world tendency so they can do the level again and fight this and find where the colorless demon is to get the soul to be able to upgrade said weapon. Like, I just think the whole system is complete garbage. And this will lead into my next thing, world tendency. I just don't like it. I think world tendency is just very annoying. Personally, I think it was meant to be there if you are constantly playing online and you can easily alter your world tendency by doing PvP and stuff like that. But if you're not doing PvP or if you're playing the game offline, like if you're playing the PS3 version, that just I don't think the servers are still online. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure the servers on the PS3 version are offline. You have to like basically plan your shit out properly to be able to um, you know, alter the world tendency to get what you need. And it was just super obnoxious. Basically, I had to plan out to get to pure black world tendency in Valley of Defilement so I can farm the red Phantom Depraved one for the Stone of I think it's Ephemeral, Stone of Ephemeral Eyes, so that I can go human and then kill myself in the level to uh, get the colorless demon to spawn. And it's just this extra obtuse, annoying thing. I hated it. I hate the world tendency. I'm glad it never made it back. I think it sucks. Um, and another thing is I actually opted to fight all of the Black Phantoms, which require you to, I believe it's get pure Black world tendency. And yeah, like a huge chunk of my playthrough, which I did not edit out by the way, is literally just me farming the Depraved ones in 5-2. And the annoying thing is that, like, let's say for me, you want to fight the Black Phantom and then get the colorless demon soul, for example, and get the pure black world tendency events. When you kill the colorless demon soul, it increases the world tendency. So you have to have more stone of ephemeral eyes so you can kill yourself to reduce it back to 0. Um, so yeah, it just sucks. It sucks in general. Like, if you try, it's funny because there was a guy at work trying to convince a coworker who just recently had bought a PS5 to get into Souls games, and he was recommending Demon Souls. And this was before I did my playthrough, so I was like, "Yeah, man, you should play Demon Souls. It's great." And he tried playing it, and he hated it. And then that's when I did my playthrough, and I was thinking, like, "Yeah, man, like how is anyone who isn't looking shit up supposed to like know this stuff? It's just very cryptic and obtuse and confusing, and I yeah, I'm sure some people like World Tendency, but I hate it. It's more annoying than fun. So yeah, it sucks. I should have talked about this, I guess, when I was talking about the bosses, but I did mention that I did fight all the Black Phantom NPCs, which can be quite difficult. More than anything, I just want to talk about one of them because all the others were, for the most part, pretty forgettable, except um, Salen Vinland, I believe is her name, in Valley of Defilement. This, I think, is probably the hardest thing in Demon Souls, but only in the PS3 version, because the PS3 version does not have the ring that lets you move normally in the swamp. So when you're fighting Salen Vinland on the PlayStation 3 version, you have to like fight her with no mobility essentially. And this Black Phantom was a giant pain in the ass. Again, I actually think it's the hardest challenge in the game. And while I'm at it, yeah, the PlayStation 5 remake added I think the Iron Ring. It might have been called something different, but the ring that basically allows you to have normal mobility in the swamp. Um, for this specific change, it's hard for me to judge it because I do hate the swamp, but I'm sure that's not how the developers intended the level to be played. So I'm kind of torn between whether I'm okay with the addition of that ring or not. I mean, I guess you could just opt to not use it, but yeah, that was. I just wanted to mention the Black Phantom, specifically Selin Vinland, because yeah, she was a freaking nightmare, especially in the PS3 version. I'll quickly talk about the grass, the healing system in Demon Souls. Again, I just don't think it's very good. I've always hated healing systems like this in any Souls game. Like, I like Bloodborne, but Bloodborne, I have a problem with it too. Having to farm blood vials is a pain in the ass. Having to farm grass is a pain in the ass. And Dark Souls 2 is like this weird hybrid where you have your Estus and life gems. Um, my argument is that for Demon Souls, you know, you can break the game as much patience as you have to farm healing items. So for me, my farming spot, and I'm not even saying I coined this farming spot. I might have looked it up. I can't remember. It's just if there's one thing I remember is farming for grass in Demon Souls, and it was just in the Tower Knight checkpoint. You basically just turn around, kill the knight, and rinse and repeat, and you can get a lot of grass this way relatively quickly. And yeah, unfortunately, grass just kind of breaks the game depending on how much you're willing to farm. I don't really like systems like this. I very much like the Estus system because it's more tightly balanced. You know, the developers basically kind of decide for you, like, hey, this is roughly how much healing you should have at this point of the game, and if you are getting hit a lot, then you should be getting hit less. Whereas with Demon Souls, you can go into a level with 90 grass and get hit as much as you want, as long as you don't die, you'll be fine. You have essentially near infinite healing. So yeah, I just wanted to have this short section. I don't really like the grass system very much. I think it kind of sucks. I'll quickly talk about the encumbrance system in the game, which is like your item carry limit. Uh, I also don't like this very much. It can be kind of annoying to be mid level and like you forgot to put your items with stockpile Thomas, and then you have to throw shit away or leave the level. And yeah, I'm glad this didn't make it back in any of the future Souls games. I think it's just needlessly obnoxious, and it just doesn't really add much to the game in terms of like enjoyment. Some people might like it, I guess, but I don't. Now this is the section where I'm going to talk about the differences from the PlayStation 3 to the PlayStation 5 version. Um, Now I'll start with the positives of the PS5 version because um, I'm not a huge fan of the PS5 version of the game. I will say, from a graphical perspective, the game looked great. Like graphically, it's a beautiful game. It's a very nice looking game. My issue with the PS5 version is the changes that Bluepoint made to the artistic vision of the original. For anyone that has seen any of the videos by The first one I saw was the one by Ratatosker, I think is the YouTuber. Um, there are some very obvious changes that I'm sure most people that are even like know a little bit about Demon Souls will know. Like Fat Official, for example, the Fat Official change is just one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. I mean, the PS5 Fat Official looks so bad, it's almost comical. It's like Blue Point, like had just no idea what made the Fat Official as iconic as he is in the PlayStation 3 version. You'll have other aspects like the vegetation and Boletaria that just lore wise makes no sense. Uh, you have the Flame Lurker looking like a Diablo villain, the Flame Lurker area looking like something you would see again in like Diablo or something. It's just completely tone deaf. Um, there's even more subtle stuff like the Tower Knight like sound effects when you hit his ankles are different. You'll have like the Penetrator for whatever reason they give him this like dark energy shit on his sword, which just it's just not what it was in the original. They just it's I swear like Blue Point just thought like, hey, this looked cool, and they just put it in the game without like zero regard to the lore and just what Miyazaki was going for. Um, what else? I'm going off the top of my head, just trying to think of all the changes I can think of that I just thought were just complete garbage. Tower of Latria just got completely destroyed by Blue Point. Like, talk about being completely clueless. The buzzing of the insects is gone, replaced with like the ending song of of one of the endings in the game. It's just stupid. Um, Rydell's like screams were completely like toned down. It's just the whole area was totally fucked. And like I said, I don't even like playing 3-1, but like the best part about 3-1 was the atmosphere, and on the PS5 version, it's completely desecrated by Blue Point. Um, the Fool's Idol looks like shit. like, so I saw a video someone made that the Fool's Idol is supposed to look like someone that the prisoners could worship, and like Blue Point is just so clueless that they just made her look like this evil, like generic witch. Um, the man eaters look completely different. Like they're like these gross, hideous, disgusting monsters. Where like they just changed the design on so many things, like the man eaters, the bug monsters, and 3-2 were completely freaking changed. Another thing I remember seeing is that they changed the color of like the banners in 3-2. I think they changed them from yellow to red, which is just completely tone deaf on their part because there's a significance to them being the color that they are based on who the boss is for World 3. You'll have like, I think Crown of Thorns got fucked the least, but still, Vanguard looks like complete shit. Like, Vanguard had this like very like alien looking look to him, and now he's just this disgusting, ugly monster. Same thing with the Adjudicator; he looks like complete garbage. Um, like it's just so bad. One thing I didn't mention too is the the sound design of 3-2 got totally destroyed as well, especially when you get to the bottom of the level. All that like ambient sort of toad frog sounds at the bottom, which were very memorable to me, are just gone. Um, it's so garbage. You have the creepy laugh of the Reapers in 4-2 is just freaking gone for whatever reason. Um, it's just so shit. And then Valley of Defilement. One thing that I really didn't see anyone else talk about is um, 5-2. I mentioned earlier in the video that I liked how 5-2 was kind of mysterious in the sense that you can never see the edge of the map because it was like raining. You had like low visibility, and you had the like ambient sound of the raining, and it's just like not even raining in the PS5 version, and you can see the edges of the cave, and it's just I just think that whole atmosphere of the game was completely desecrated by Blue Point. It's such a shame, and yeah, it sucks. Honestly, it really sucks. King Allant looks like complete shit. Like I'll have the intro cutscene to the King Allant boss fight from the PS3 to the PS5 version. Like it's like night and day. It's so funny how the old ass PS3 version, King Allant looks way more like threatening and sort of evil than he does in the remake. And then you have other things that are just like weird. Like I remember like Setsuki looks fucking weird in the PS5 remake. Um, it's almost like there's like this like I hate to even take it to this topic, but it's almost like this like woke sort of I just get the feeling of this like woke social justice vibe from some of the decisions made in the PS5 version, especially with the Crestfallen Warrior. Like I don't know why the hell they made him black. Like it's just so stupid. Like he wasn't black in the original, but even if we ignore the fact that they just race swapped this character for whatever freaking reason, like the delivery of his voice line when you talk to him for the first time, it's just like night and day. Like the PS3 one, I'm just gonna play him honestly.
Or to save this land and be remembered as a hero. Hunting for demons? Try one of the archstones. Now go. That is why you came, is it not? To this accursed Boletaria. Well, you slipped through the fissure too, did you? You came for demon souls? Or to save this land and be remembered as a hero? Hunting for demons? Try one of the archstones. Now go. That is why you came, is it not? To this accursed Boletaria.
Uh, I'll play that interaction from PS3 to PS5. It's just not even close. I hate the PS5 interpretation of that scene. They got just some like subtle dialogue changes, which I just don't know why they like have to mess with the dialogue. It's just weird to me. Like even as early on as the first like sort of cutscene in the game where you first spawn the Nexus and um, the maiden in the original calls each level like nodes, which I thought was cool. Um, you know, and then in the PS5 version, she calls it Outer Lands, and I don't know why they're fucking with the dialogue and like race swapping characters. It's just completely stupid. To me, it's just kind of like a disrespect to the original, and I mean, it's kind of obvious that Blue Point has no respect for the original game and its artistic vision because they totally shot all over it. So, yeah, even though like on a surface level, the PS5 version looks really nice, and I'll give Blue Point credit. Like graphically, it looks really good. But on a thematic and atmosphere level, like I think the game is total garbage. Um, which just leads into like which version do I recommend people play? I mean, and for me, it's pretty obvious that I think if you're gonna play Demon Souls with its lackluster levels and mediocre bosses, you might as well play the version with the superior soundtrack and the better atmosphere, since you know like the levels are gonna suck regardless. The levels and the bosses are gonna be mediocre to garbage um, on average, whether you play the PS5 version or the PS3 version. You might as well experience the atmosphere of the PS3 version, which is just far superior. Unfortunately, easier said than done nowadays. You pretty much need a PS3 or an emulator on your computer to play the original. But yeah, I think the original is just superior. It's just not even close. And yeah, I just really hate it when like a Western company or Western devs just change originals that they're remaking. Um, you see this a lot with localization for Japanese games. The localization team will just change the dialogue just because they I guess they just have so little talent that they'll fuck with the original dialogue and change it to whatever they see fit instead of just translating the freaking game. Hence the reason why I just hate the fact that they changed some of the dialogue from the original to the PS5 version. Quickly talk about the New Game Plus. Originally, I was going to only do one playthrough on each version until I saw this Reddit thread where people were saying that New Game Plus was really hard and that's where all the difficulty is. And it's funny because I stumbled upon that Reddit thread after I had beaten uh, each version one time, and I was like, all right, I'm done with this. And once I saw that thread, I was like, man, am I really about to do New Game Plus? And I did. So that's why I played the game a total of 4 times. Frankly, yeah, New Game Plus is harder, but I don't think it really made the game that much more difficult. Again, most of the elements of Demon Souls are very. Um, it's almost like a knowledge check. Like, do you know the gimmick that the boss is trying to do? Do you know where to go in the level to, complete it? Do you know what traps the level has set forth? Like, if you already know that, yeah, New Game Plus will be a little bit harder, but I just didn't really think it was as hard as I guess Reddit was hyping it out to be. I'll quickly talk about the weapons that I used. I don't really have too much to say. I think that the Demon Souls weapons are, in general, like nothing super interesting, but I guess I'll quickly just talk about my thoughts on the 4 weapons that I used. On the PS3, I did a dexterity build and I used the hiltless katana on my first playthrough. It was pretty powerful. Like once it got going, yeah, I mean it's the job done. It does hurt you. I believe it hurts you anytime you hit an enemy, but with the pretty much infinite grass that you have or you should have, um, it doesn't really matter too much. You can also just, I think I ended up doing that. Yeah, I would just have the adjudicator shield, which gives you a little bit of health regen to mitigate the self damage that you take when using the weapon. But yeah, I thought the hiltless was pretty good. I mean, it's I think it's a pretty powerful weapon. However, there is the penetrator sword. I think the penetrator sword is complete dog shit. I originally planned on using the penetrator sword for New Game Plus, but it was just frankly so bad that for certain bosses, like the man eaters, for example, I I was just like, you know what, like screw this, and you'll see it on my playthrough. Like sometimes I'll try my best to use the penetrator sword, but there are times where I was just like, you know what, like I don't care enough to do this with the penetrator sword, and I would just switch back to hitless. My issue with the penetrator sword is the fact that the only way you do damage is with the R2. Like your R1s do almost zero damage. It's actually comical how little damage your R1s do. So you're pretty much only doing quite literally one attack when using the penetrator sword, which is just not that interesting or enjoyable. So yeah, I would not recommend penetrator sword. I think it's garbage. I would not bother with it. That's just me. Then I used the Dragon Bone Smasher for the my first strength playthrough on the PS5. I think this weapon is cracked. That's absolutely insane. If you can get through Flame Lurker early and get the Dragon Bone Smasher early, I mean, you pretty much go from like pretty weak to just God mode. I mean, just the weapon like staggers most enemies. It does crazy damage. It's just overall like really strong. Um, so yeah, I don't really have much negative to say. I do actually, as much as I dislike the PS5 version in general of Demon Souls, I do like the sound effect when you actually hit an enemy with the Dragon Bone Smasher. It makes like this clank, this clanging sound. So I do like that. That is pretty satisfying. And then for my second playthrough of the PS5 version, I used the. To be honest with you, I forgot the name of the weapon, but I believe is Executioner Meralda's axe, the one-handed axe, and yeah, I actually liked it quite a bit. If you didn't have to go through hell and back to get the strength scaling infusion, I would say it's my favorite weapon. But unfortunately, upgrading it is an complete total nightmare. I actually think I lost some of my recording, or I just chose not to record some of the grinding that I did to get the materials to upgrade it. But yeah, it sucks. I almost want to say I like the weapon a lot, but just the grind to upgrade it, it's just not worth it. Like as annoying as it is upgrading stuff with colorless demon souls, it is way less obnoxious than farming these materials. So just overall thoughts on Demon Souls. Again, I having played it again in 2025. I did play it 4 times, but I'm kind of glad I did because it gave me this sort of perspective that I don't really like this game that much. I don't know if I'll ever play it again, but like I said, most of the levels, with the exception of like Boletaria and maybe 3-2, I just did not like very much. Most of the bosses I didn't like. I don't like the world tendency. I don't like the upgrade system. I think it's obnoxious and annoying. And yeah, like from a gameplay perspective, like I enjoy most aspects of Demon Souls. I don't like the gimmicky sort of puzzle bosses, but uh, it is a very intriguing world that Miyazaki created. And if you, I think the game should be experienced at least once, and it is pretty short. So I do recommend people play the game at least one time just to experience it. But I just don't think it holds up very well, especially compared to current Souls games and current Souls likes. Um, like unfortunately, it's just hard for me to enjoy stuff like Demon Souls after I've played things like Lies of P and Kazan. Like it's just difficult for me to go back to something like Demon Souls or even Dark Souls 1. But yeah, overall, in my opinion, honestly, I would recommend it if someone has the means to play both versions, just to do one playthrough on each. I think that would be optimal. Like experience the PS3 version and the PS5 version. I mean, again, the PS5 version does have omnidirectional rolling, which is nice. It's very beautiful, but I think it misses the point of a lot of the intentional decisions that Miyazaki made when it comes to the atmosphere and the lore of Demon Souls. So, if you had to play it one time, I'd say go with the PS3. But if you have the means to play both versions, I would say play each version one time. I still recommend it. While I don't like it very much, I still think it's a game that if you're into Souls games, it's worth experiencing. But yeah, it just doesn't hold up that well in my opinion. And yeah, that's pretty much it.